welcome again to one of our conversations with Mexicans in New England. That, as you know, as part of our public diplomacy program, the Consulate of Mexico does these conversations in order to showcase the importance of Mexican contributions to art, to culture, to science in New England. And today, the title of our conversation is The Day of the Dead in New England, How Cultural Initiatives Bring Us Closer Together. And we have two very special guests, Heidi Schork and Diana Munn. Thank you, Heidi and Diana, for being with us today and for wanting to share with us all what you're doing in these festivities this year.
Well, thank you for having us.
Let me introduce you to our two guests. Heidi Schork is the director of the City of Boston's Mayor Mural Crew. She has worked for the Boston Mayor's Office for 26 years, leading the Mural Crew, a public project of the Parks and Recreation Department of the City of Boston, whose mission is to create neighborhood landmarks with a particular emphasis on partnering with young people. Heidi lived 8 years in Mexico and is a graduate of the Tec de Monterrey in Querétaro. She describes the Mexican mural movement of the early and mid-20th century as an important influence in her mural work, of which Boston has benefited since 1991. Heidi has led countless mural installation and public art events in Boston and in Mexico. And we will hear more about what she's doing now. Diana Munn is the director of public programs at Harvard Museum of Science and Culture. She's a biologist by training with a postgraduate studies in botany and a graduate certificate in adult education from Johns Hopkins University. During her multifaceted career, Diana has become a museum professional with expertise areas as diverse as administration, board relations, community outreach, international relations, communications, and marketing. Diana has developed and implemented a number of programs for some of the leading scientific institutions of the US and Mexico, including a collaboration of 11 years at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. So again, thank you both for being with us today. And let's begin. Heidi, we know Mexico stole your heart. Could you share with us the story of how you got there, why you established there for 8 years, and what was it that made you fall for Mexico?
Well, I decided to take a year between high school and college and learn Spanish. That was really what I wanted to do, and considered going to Spain. And then my mother said, "Oh, let's go to this town I heard about, San Miguel de Allende. And there's a language school there, and it's supposed to be one of the most beautiful towns in the world. And you can learn."
Now it is called a Pueblo Mágico, and it is one of the most beautiful Mexican towns for sure.
Right. But in 1975, San Miguel de Allende, even though there was the Instituto Allende and Bellas Artes, two very well-known art schools in San Miguel de Allende, it was still a very small town and dusty, but absolutely charming. And it didn't really take me too long to become part of San Miguel de Allende. And I think it's because I very quickly learned how to speak Spanish. I had a lot of motivation. I wanted to know what people were talking about on the street and to go into the panaderia and be able to do order a bolillo like a San Miguelense. So, and then I really didn't want to come back to America. So the order was, well, you can't just stay in San Miguel de Allende forever and enjoy yourself. You need to be in college. And so I said, well, I will stay and go to college in Mexico. And that's how I ended up at the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Querétaro, which had just opened. And I had to take the entrance exam in Spanish. And I was very nervous and, oh no, what will happen? And then I got a phone call saying, we will be very happy to have you study here. And you have to do all of these things. And that was when I really, I think, began to truly love Mexico as a student at the Tech. And that's what kept me there. I was when you are a university student somewhere, you are completely immersed in the culture. And my best friends, my dearest friends, my classmates, and my professors are my friends to this day. So that's how I became so in love with Mexico, as you say.
Thank you, Heidi. And what about you, Diana? We also know that your dad is from Brunswick, Maine, and you're Oaxaca. Specific, told us in an interview you gave for Harvard podcast. Could you tell us more up in a multicultural environment, mom's dialects, Mazateco? How was this an influence?
Wow, those are a lot of questions. So the first one about being in a multicultural home, I think that that opened up for me a window into different ways of thinking, different ways of being, different ways of experiencing life. And I think that has made me a very open-minded person and also a very curious person. I've always been, since I was small, very interested in learning about other people's cultures. And one of your questions was about how my background may have influenced the way or my path into the museum world. I think it definitely has, and I feel very lucky to be a museum professional, because in the museum world, we're constantly learning new things, we're constantly developing new projects, and all of these projects have to do with understanding objects, understanding who made them, understanding the relationships between people and objects. And so I think that, yes, that background really led me into a field where I can truly be curious and where I can constantly learn new things. I unfortunately did not learn my mom's language, Mazatec. So there are actually many dialects of Mazatec, but Mazatec itself is a language. It's a tonal language. So it's similar to Chinese. There are many different tones, at least 4 different tones per syllable. And when I was growing up in Mexico City, my mom didn't think that I would ever need to speak the language. So unfortunately, she didn't teach it to me. And in fact, when I was older, I ended up spending a lot of time in her community doing research. So I would have benefited from learning it, but at this point, I'm not sure I could pick it up. It is such difficult language, but it's a beautiful language, and I love listening to it. And I grew up listening to it at home while I was also listening to English, listening to Spanish. So yeah, I was living in a tricultural world between Mexico City, super urban, busy, my mom's community in northern Oaxaca, very small, rural, and then the United States. I lived in San Francisco. So all of these contrasts really shaped how I see the world. And
that's what I was.
so it's definitely had a very, very important impact. And when I was young, I was a little uncomfortable not being quite in one culture But now I am very comfortable. And in fact, I can now negotiate different cultures very well. I can be in the United States and feel completely American. I can be in Mexico and feel completely Mexican. And I can also feel in between, which is absolutely okay.
Yeah, great. What a wonderful answer, Diana. And I think there's still much to know about a generation of bicultural people like you, like Lila Downs, and so many others that have that triple thing: the indigenous, the Mexican, and the American, which is fantastic to see that blend. Heidi, the Mayor's Mural crew very much started with you. How was this initiative developed? How have you seen an increasing participation of the Latino community in your projects?
Well, it was 29 years ago that and different mayor, Ray Flynn was the mayor of Boston at that time, and there was quite a lot of gang violence in certain neighborhoods in Boston, and they were looking for an artist who could do mural painting and um, offer another kind of summer job other than menial labor to young people who would be employed as sort of a violence prevention program. And so a friend of mine said, they're looking for an artist. Why don't you go and interview for a job to see what it's about? And I went, and they told me more or less what, we were looking for someone who can manage a group of high school students, and it's going to be an experiment. Have you ever done anything like this? And I said, no, but I think I can do it and I would love to do it. So I got the job, and well, that was 29 years ago. And it really was just an experiment to see if young people would large scale mural painting on the sides of buildings in Boston. And I worked very, very hard to make sure that they would love it and that it worked, and that this was something completely new, this sort of community mural art at that time. It was happening in Philadelphia, it was happening in LA and in San Francisco, but it really not at all here in Boston. Of course, LA and San Francisco, the Mexican influence, um, but nothing like that here. So I also remember that when I was studying at the Tech, we were constantly reminded that the work that we were doing in communities where that might be underserved was perhaps our most important work at the Tech when Mexico was a developing country in the 1970s. That your job as a university student was to take your work outside of your comfort zone. So this was kind of the same sort of situation working here in Boston those first few years. And then we became a bigger group of people, not just me alone. I was able to find young art students from Mass Art and the Museum School to work with me as staff artists. And then we were able to hire 60 young people every summer. So we were a lot of people painting murals over a period of time, and all of a sudden you turn a corner and a part of Boston would be immediately transformed. So that was very exciting. Over the years, the young people who have signed up to work for the mural crew have been extremely diverse and literally come from one corner of Boston to the next, from every kind of school, from a private school to a small charter school. The I'd say the past 10 years, we've had many more young people from Central America who have signed up to do the mural crew in the summer. And I, of course, speak Spanish to those kids in kind of an exclusive way. And because I feel that this is part of the culture of Central America too, the painting on walls, the mural tradition. I love to introduce that to young people who don't know about it. So bringing the culture of Mexico through mural painting is one of my ulterior motives, I think, because we are neighbors, but from Boston to Mexico is very far.
Thank you, Heidi. And Diana, tell us about how, after being, as you mentioned before, in Mexico, in San Francisco, in Washington, D.C., how did you end here in Boston? And what is special to you here in New England?
So I actually moved here to take on the job that I currently hold at the Harvard Museums of Science and Culture. It was a really great opportunity to be involved in public programming, and it was exciting to the idea of working at Harvard. After working at the Smithsonian, there are very few places that you want to go to, but I really wanted to explore what it was like to work in higher education. But actually, I had already spent some time in Massachusetts because I went to Smith College in Northampton, and my grandmother was from Springfield on my dad's side, and my Australian grandfather studied psychology at Clark University. So I actually have some
a lot of connection,
a lot of roots in Massachusetts. And I find that it's a wonderful state. It's a very progressive state. And I love New England weather. I like the change of the seasons. I was just driving today from Cambridge to Connecticut, and just seeing the change of leaves. I mean, that's beautiful. And I think New England is very lucky to have such differentiated seasons that they're wonderful. So that's something I really enjoy about New England.
Thank you, Diana. And so now let's come to the theme that gathers us today, with the upcoming celebration of the Day of the Dead. Heidi, why is this particular tradition the one which you embrace to replicate in Boston? And Diana, why was it decided that the Day of the Dead would get a full-fledged celebration at the Peabody Museum, something that has been done since 2003?
It was at the suggestion of the previous consul, Emilio Rabasa. He said he had heard that I had done a altar de muertos in Puerto Vallarta. And he said, why don't you make one here? And I brought the idea to the Parks Commissioner, and he said, oh, well, let's do it on the Boston Common. And then he said, no, let's do it in Copley Square. And I said, oh, Copley Square is the best of all possible locations, right in the heart of the city, a giant plaza. I had a vision for that. So for the first 2 years that we made our altar, our Mexican or our Boston Dia de Muertos altar, it was in Copley Square. This year we are moving it to another beautiful location.
That you'll tell us more about this year in a little bit.
Oh, okay. So back to the question is, why this particular holiday? And I think that since I lived in San Miguel de Allende, which is uh, kind of like living on the set of Coco, um, that there was always a market of calaveritas and cempasúchil just before the Dia de Muertos in San Miguel, and the big deal in San Miguel in the Panteon, but also in everyone's home, where they'd open up the zaguan and there'd be a table and the altar of everyone's house. So I really felt that I was familiar with the elements necessary. And then we decided that this would be a great way for Bostonians to be able to participate in the holiday by sending us photos of their difuntitos, and that we could put them in the altar. So that was one of our missions, was to have ordinary people participate in the celebration, whether or not they were Mexican, and to bring it to a very central location in Boston.
You started it even before Coco, I suppose.
Before Coco, and then the second year that we did it was Coco Mania, and everybody had seen Coco, and then we were overwhelmed because the movie, I think the movie captured the essence of Dia de Muertos, and explained the tradition of honoring your departed people in such a lovely way, that it was something that a little American child wanted to participate in. This seemed better than Halloween and more loving. So then we had the Coco, the post-Coco effect, which brought thousands of people to see our altar last year in Copley Square.
I'm sure that has happened almost everywhere with every person that has the Day of the Dead. But tell us, Diana, about the experience at the Peabody.
Yeah, so I agree with you that there's a pre-Coco and there's a post-Coco. And actually, I have to say that before that movie came out, I was really concerned about what they might do, but I think they did an amazing job. They really, really captured elements that are so difficult to articulate sometimes. But anyway, at the Peabody, we've been celebrating the Day of the Dead since 2003. So this would be the 17th, 18th year. The museum has celebrated this holiday for a very long time before it was really popular. And I think it had to do with the fact that Harvard has always had very strong connections with Mexico, and specifically the Peabody Museum. There's a long history of research between the museum and Mexico, mostly archaeological. And I think that it's also in part due to the faculty, who have a deep appreciation for Mexico and who wanted to have this celebration at the Peabody. And over the years, it really has transformed. It has changed depending on who is responsible for it. But now we have a permanent altar where staff from the Peabody and other adjacent museums, when they lose someone, they actually bring photos of them and place them on this altar. So it really has become a community altar at the museum, and people always get very excited about it, and we're always delighted to have this event every single year.
Thank you, Diana and Heidi. This has been a tough year, a tough 8 months, as we all know. I suppose that it will give us special significance to this year's celebrations of the Day of the Dead. Could you both tell us what are your plans for this year?
Well, we are, there was some discussion, what should we do? Should we carry on? And then I decided that this year we really didn't want to create a gathering, which is so opposite of the way I normally operate as an artist. A lot of the work that I have done is around bringing people together in a group, and now I have to constantly think of ways of bringing people together but separately, so you maintain social distance, and also to use our outdoor space in Boston. So we really didn't want to have a big crowd of people, but we wanted to have people come and see what are the altars that we've created. So we decided to place our installation really on a beautiful bridge in Franklin Park at a small pond called Scarborough Pond. It is in the south west corner of Franklin Park. And if you don't know Franklin Park, it is one of the, if not the most beautiful parts of Boston. Designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, it is definitely the largest jewel in emerald necklace, and a very rare thing in such a big city to find all of this park space, acres and acres of 100-year-old trees and very long, beautiful vistas. So we wanted people to, our purpose is to come and enjoy the park, take a walk, un paseo, and also visit our altars that are going to be placed on the bridge, and look for your photo if you've submitted one to our photo archive, and get to know a part of Boston that might be unfamiliar. Take advantage of the weather. This is one of the most beautiful times of the year in the park.
Thank you, Heidi. And that will be Saturday and Sunday.
Saturday and Sunday, the 31st and the 1st. Mm-hmm. And we expect to be kicking things off around noon each day. And then we should be out with all our stuff, which is a lot of stuff, as you can imagine, until early in the evening. The moonrise on each day, and there is a full moon, is at just past 5:30. So I'm really looking forward to seeing a beautiful big full moon, and all our candles and our cempasúchil and the hundreds of photos that already have come in for this year, and the other stuff that people contribute, and many things that we've been working on all fall to make it special.
Thank you, Heidi. And what about you, Diana? I understand that Harvard is closed and it's impossible to get, even for students, sometimes or researchers, it's difficult to get into some of the buildings. How is the Peabody gonna celebrate this year?
So yes, we are still closed, and we have decided to have one virtual event over Zoom, of course, because Zoom is the place to be. This event is going to take place on Sunday, November 1st from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's a family-friendly event. We're going to have music performed remotely by Mariachi Veritas, which is a Harvard student-led a musical group. We're going to learn about how papel picado is made in Mexico City. We have a guest artist who is going to tell us about his work. We are going to have as guest a cultural group based in Chelsea, Massachusetts called Quetzali. So they're going to tell us a little bit more about how they celebrate the Day of the Dead here in Massachusetts. So we have a full lineup of things. I hope that people will come and join us. It's certainly, this is a celebration that is meant to take place in community. That's a very important part of it. And back to what you were saying earlier, this year being such a difficult year for everyone. I think we've all experienced some type of grief, whether it's because we know of someone who died of COVID, or because we can't be with family, or we can't be in school. There's so much that we've gone through. And this celebration offers a space, an opportunity to grieve together. It's always bittersweet. That means that we try to bring joy to the sadness that we feel, the grief that we feel. But it's not all, some people think that it's all a big party, and it's not. It's a celebration of life. It's celebration of those we love and hold dear. And I think that this year it's going to be particularly meaningful to all of us as we find these spaces to grieve and remember.
Thank you so much, both of you. And yes, it's incredible how, at least in the US, the Mexican celebration of the Day of the Dead, which is, by the way, the indigenous festivity, is part of the world's intangible patrimony by UNESCO. But it has become a very, very important issue in the US. When I was in Washington, it was huge celebration, not only at the Mexican Cultural Institute, but at the zoo, at the parks, and you have been fundamental in the celebration and bringing this important tradition to Boston. So thank you so much because it's something that we Mexicans love to share. It's part of our what we are and how we see the path of life and death. And it's sad, but at the same time, it is remembrance brings also happiness. Do you have a final word, both of you, for the people that are watching us, other than inviting them to your events on this weekend?
Well, I hope that everyone puts on a lot of layers, and because we are in New England and the weather can always get warmer or colder from 1 minute to the next. But to really to come out and enjoy a beautiful walk in the park, and to um, smell the copal and see the brilliant orange of the cempasúchil, and feel that this is a beautiful place to be at that moment. And I think that's really what people are needing right now, is to finding solace in nature and being outside and just enjoying the moment. So those are my hopes for this weekend. And I hope to see everyone there.
Thank you, Heidi.
I definitely want to be there.
Well,
I love everything you do. And I've been so impressed by the exhibit at the Copley Plaza, and I'm sure this new project is going to be amazing, gorgeous. I would say to those who can join us, please do. But if you can't join us, I encourage everyone to do a little bit of research. Day of the Dead, or Todos Santos, as my family calls it. It's it's a very beautiful celebration. And if nothing else, I'm not trying to plug the movie, but you could watch Coco with your family, learn a little bit more about it, learn more about this beautiful Mexican tradition.
Thank you very much, Heidi and Diana, and everyone that took the time to see us, to be with us in this conversation. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you next week.
Thank you.
Gracias.